Yes, I'm so excited about the day we're going to spend together. And this is special for me because what we're doing this morning is something I have never done. One of the slight frustrations I have with my book is that in most places, people want to talk about self-management all the time. Like no hierarchy, no managers. And almost nobody seems to be very interested in the part that interests me a lot, which is around the evolutionary purpose of organizations. So it was special for me when the organizers said, this morning we're going to talk about purpose. So I was great, let's talk about organizational purpose.
Yes, 来た、もう、組織の目的について話すぞ。
But then the organizer said, no, we want to talk about your purpose. And I'm always a little bit shy to talk about myself. But the organizers were very insisting and thought, it was important that we not only talk about the purpose of organizations, but that we also dare to inquire into our own purpose. What is important for us in our lives as individuals before we even talk about the organizational purpose. So, yes, I'm happy to share a little bit about my own personal journey when it comes to purpose. But really what's, I think, interesting and important is not so much my journey, Frederick, but how you will resonate or not with that, what that might mean for yourself. Hopefully by listening to my story, you will be able to say, hey, that speaks to me, or no, I see things differently. Sometimes it's by noticing that you disagree with someone that you discover your own truth. So feel free to disagree with everything I say. Actually, it took me a very long time to even understand that there was something like purpose in life. My story when I was young, when I was a child, was that I seemed to have the kind of narrow intelligence that our schools select for. So I was very good in school. I was always the best in my class, which might sound nice, but the flip side of that is that I've learned as a child to only do what was expected of me and never even really wonder about what I wanted or who I was. And so when I was 18, like I think a lot of young people, I left school and I had no idea who I was or what I wanted to do with my life. I mean, I was a pretty happy child, but I just had no idea what life wanted from me. But because I was very good in school, I just went to the most difficult, most prestigious university in Belgium. And then I graduated top of that university. And there was an unspoken tradition that the best students would go to a consulting firm. The next students would go to an accounting firm. The next students would go to larger corporates. And if you were the best of the consulting, you would go to McKinsey, and I went to McKinsey. I went there, and part of me loved it because it was exciting, and we were working in small teams. But part of me always felt that it made no sense at all. Every time I took a step back, and I was thinking, I'm helping a bank or an insurance company make more money, that is not a purpose I resonate with at all. And I stayed there for almost 10 years, but always I was thinking, I'm only going to stay for 6 more months until I figure out what I really want to do. But then 6 months, and 6 months, and 6 months, and 6 months.
というふうになっていたわけです。
You don't do 6 months?
やれてね、6ヶ月、6ヶ月、6ヶ月、6ヶ月。
Until one day, finally, I was 33 years old. I started to get some sense of what I wanted to do in my life, which was that I was starting to feel the pain that I saw in organizations of everybody wearing a mask and people not able to be truly themselves. And so I felt that I wanted to become a coach and a facilitator and create spaces in these large organizations where people could finally say what they really felt, what was really important to them. I left McKinsey, everybody told me, you're crazy, you have this promising career and you're just going to be a coach. I was just made an associate partner, sort of a junior partner, so this is not the moment you're supposed to leave. But then I was really happy. I found something that felt truly meaningful to me. These large corporations would actually pay me to do something I would have done for free, which is to go there and have spaces where people can be themselves. And so I was very happy, and I felt like, oh, now I know what purpose is, because I have found my purpose. Frederick is a coach, and I'm going to be a coach for the rest of my life. And then I was completely shocked when 4 years later, something happened. In the spring of 2011, I suddenly had a moment of sadness, of lack of energy that I couldn't explain because everything in my life was going really well. I didn't understand it. Why am I so sad? Why don't I feel no energy for this work that I love? And that was a very instructive moment in my life. Because I realized that the sadness that I felt was a mourning.
Warning?
A mourning when somebody dies, for this work that I thought that I would do for the rest of my life. I realized I could no longer work with these large orange organizations. I was creating little bubbles of sanity. But I just felt that when I was going into these headquarter buildings of these large banks and chemical firms, everything was cold and soulless. The marble, the glass everywhere. It was not something I had chosen in my head. It was just something in my body that told me, like, I don't want to do this anymore. And so I told all my clients that I was, going to stop the work I was doing. And then something magical happened. For some reason, I understood what was the right question I needed to ask myself. I guess the logical question I should have asked myself is, okay, so what is my next job going to be? What is my next identity going to be? What am I going to put on a business card? How am I going to make money? But instead, I just knew there was a different question I needed to ask myself. This is very personal. For me, this was very powerful, and I imagine that when I share this with you, it will not feel as powerful for you as it was for me in that moment. And the question was, what would be the most meaningful thing I could do right now? Not what is my purpose in life. And I somehow had this trust that if I just follow the most meaningful thing I can do, the universe would give me some money at some point. I cannot imagine that I do what is the most meaningful thing I can contribute and no money will come to me. And when I asked myself that question, a lot of pressure came off my shoulders. It's not what is the best thing to do in my life, what's the purpose? It's just right now, with what I know, what's the most meaningful thing I could do? And the answer came very quickly. It was 2 projects, and one of the 2 became Reinventing Organization. What I experienced then was something that I've since heard from a lot of people, a lot of artists, of singers and songwriters and movie makers. What they say is they don't know where their purpose comes from, where their projects come from, where their ideas come from, where their songs come from. Suddenly the songs are there. That's what happened with reinventing organization. I just knew there was this question, if I can no longer work with these traditional, soulless organizations, is it possible to create entirely different organizations based on a different perspective? So I generally don't share this because otherwise people might think I'm crazy or I'm smoking a little bit too much. But I feel that I didn't choose this book chose me. And so I share this story because I feel that sometimes we have a notion that to me seems mistaken about purpose. Sometimes people feel like purpose is something static, something you can declare for the rest of your life. This is my life's purpose. I don't know if the same exists in Japan, but I know that in the West there are workshops where people are helped to discover their purpose, and at the end you have one sentence, and this is my purpose. I no longer believe in that. What I believe in instead is something very beautiful that was put into words by an American author that I like very much, Parker Palmer. He said this beautiful thing, which totally applies to my own life. He said, for a long time, I led the life that I thought I needed to live until I discovered that I could simply listen to the life that wants to be lived through me. So that's how I go through life now, as seeing life and purpose as a mystery, that I don't decide. What I want to do is to allow as much as possible that life lives through me. So for all the important decisions that I make in my life, I try not to actually make a decision, but to listen as much as possible to what I believe life wants me to do. And personally, I find that my head is of some use, but of limited use. But it's really my body that feels if something is right or not. I'm sure this is an experience you all have had in your life. At times your body tells you like, this feels right or not. And then I go back to my head and try to understand, why do I feel this, and does this make sense? So for me, it's my body, my intuition, my heart that tends to come first, and then my head. I find that there's some interesting techniques that sometimes help me listen, because I wish sometimes that the radio of life would be more clear. I don't know if these techniques exist in Japan, and there might be other techniques in Japan, but I like to get help sometimes with things like guided visualizations, or channeling, or family constellations, which are always manners to listen more to what life is inviting me to. And my experience in the last 10 years doing this is that it seems to me that when I surrender and just go with where life wants me to go, life becomes pretty easy. I remember before, when I was at McKinsey, all this time I was spending like, what do I want to do with my life, and is this the right thing, and I'm not so happy. Right now, I'm doing the best I know until life tells me something new. So I don't need to spend all this time thinking. So maybe this all sounds crazy, but I believe that purpose is not something that we declare, it's something that comes to us and we just follow. And I think the same thing that I talked about my personal life is true about organizations. I believe that I'm always a little disappointed when people misunderstand that in my book, where they simply believe that the third part about purpose simply means organizations should have a nice mission statement. They should have a purpose. Let's do a workshop and let's define our purpose. Instead, I think from a Teal perspective, there's this notion that the organization has its own purpose, its own thing that wants to be lived through this organization. And our role as leaders in organizations is not to make clever strategic plans, is not to make decisions like this is where we need to go. But just like I try in my own life, the goal is to listen to what does this organization naturally want? Where does it want to go? I already feel some emotion coming up about the last thing I want to share, which is that my experience and something I've read and heard from a lot of people is if you dare to follow your purpose, it helps you express your gifts, which are always based in your wounds. A personal story, but people have often asked me, why have you written Reinventing Organizations? And at some level, as I told you, I have no answer. It was just something that came to me. But maybe at a deeper level, it's not completely a surprise. When I was 8-year-old, when I was in 3rd grade in school, I had a very difficult year, the little boy that I was. I was the little boy that everybody in the class rejected. It was very strange because the years before I had friends, all the years after I had friends, but that year was very, very lonely. It was very painful for the little boy I was. On Sunday night before going back to school, I would be like, oh. But what happened was that because I was lonely at every single recess, at every single pause, I was observing all the other children. And I could observe the power dynamics. I could see that those that were the meanest to me were those that were the most afraid that they might be the next ones. And this little 8-year-old could see that the leaders, the strongest, actually didn't seem to be very happy either. They always had to be strong. So this 1 year has made me a lifelong observer about human interactions. So in many ways, this wound became my gift. And I couldn't have expressed the purpose of reinventing organizations without that particular history. And I find that incredibly beautiful, that when we let life speak through us, it brings out all of the past of our history that makes that can make the strongest contribution. And so this is a conversation I often have with leaders, presidents of organizations who want to go towards a Teal organization. I ask them, if this purpose has chosen you, why is that? What in your own story makes that's what purpose life has chosen for you? And almost always it is some wound that has become a gift that they can make to the world. So I imagine by now half of you think that I really have smoked too much. But to the other half, I want to make this invitation. Could you think about purpose not as something that you have to find, but that you could simply let purpose find you? And are you ready to be a gift to life? Thank you very much.
ありがとうございました。